Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another episode of Learn to Play Games. My name is Lance, and today we're going to take a look at Valeria Card Kingdoms. This is a game that was put out by Daily Magic Games. It's a 2 to 5 player game that's competitive, so each player is working against the other players to gain the most victory points at the end of the game. And you can do this by fighting monsters, buying domains, and gathering resources. Each player at the beginning of the game will be dealt a Duke card where that will give them their secret objectives and ways to gaining even more victory points. I really enjoy this game. I think it's very easy to teach, very easy to learn, and a lot of fun to play. One of the things I really like about it is that each player stays active throughout the other player's turns, because the active player will roll dice, and depending upon the results of those dice, each player is going to get benefits if they have the right citizens that match those dice numbers. Another thing I really like about it is it kind of almost reminds me of Casino Craps, where you're rolling a pair of dice and you're trying to get certain numbers. And as you buy citizens that are associated with certain numbers, it's almost like you're trying to guess or figure out what numbers might be coming up the most often and stacking your eggs in those areas. So I've really enjoyed it. It's been a lot of fun to play. I've tried to play it a number of times with some of my friends. Everybody seemed to enjoy it so far. I can't wait to see some of the expansions that they got coming out for this to add some new designs, new citizens to it. The game itself comes with a lot of variety. You have a number of different monster types that come with it, so each game you can create different lineups, which I'll show you guys in the video. You have different citizens, so you can change those guys out too. And they've already got a couple expansions that add some new flair to the game itself. So I'm interested to see where they go with it. And so far, I definitely like it. So let's head to the table and I'll teach you how to play. Here we have two different examples of citizen cards. At the top of each card is going to be the number to activate that citizen. In the other corner, you're going to have the role that citizen has. And as you can see in this diagram, there are 4 different ones included in the box. Then in the side here, we have the cost that citizen is to purchase and add to your area, its name, and then the rewards it gets for activating it for the active player, and the rewards that are given to the non-active players that happen to have it. Here we have an example of 2 different dukes that are included in the game, and each player will be given a duke that will be kept secret and will give them additional ways to get victory points at the end of the game. So each duke has a name, and then they have the special conditions of different ways of getting victory points. So if we look at this one, you would score 1 victory point for each soldier citizen you have, and each soldier icon you have in a domain that you've purchased. Then you would get 2 victory points for each holy symbol that you have on a domain or citizen that you have purchased, and then 1 victory point for each 3 resources that you have. With domain cards, you're going to have the requirements in citizens that you must have in order to purchase that domain, and then you're going to have the domain's cost in gold, its name, the number of victory points you'll get at the end of the game for having that domain, and then any special abilities that that domain gives you during the game. And as you can see, there are a number of different domains with different costs and requirements. Here we have the breakdown of a monster card. So at the top of the card, it's going to list the area that that monster is associated with. And as you can see in this diagram, there's a number of different areas. Then we have the type of monster. So there are minions, which this one is, beasts, titans, and bosses, as you can see in this diagram. Next, you're going to have the cost and resources that it will be to beat this particular monster, and the monster's name. So this is a goblin. The number of victory points you'll get at the end of the game for beating this monster. And at the bottom of the card, it will list the reward for beating that monster. So when you defeat the goblin, you'll receive 1 gold piece. When creating a monster stack, you get all the monsters from one area. So in this situation, we're looking at the goblins. And then you're going to build that stack based on the boss or the highest strength at the bottom of the stack and the lowest strength at the top. Normally a stack will consist of 5 cards unless you're playing with 5 players, in which case you'll include the card that has the 5th player. And then you simply stack the cards together. So we have our boss at the bottom, who's a 6. Then we have our goblin mage at 3, and then our goblins on top. And then we have our stack. At the start of the game, each player will be dealt a quick reference card. There are 2 starter citizens, which will be labeled on the back. They'll get 1 peasant and 1 knight. They'll receive 1 magic token and 2 gold. And then they'll be dealt 2 dukes face down. From here, each player will look at their dukes and choose which one they'd like to keep. They keep that one face down and the other one gets returned to the box. For board setup, the first thing you're going to do is make 5 monster stacks, and as we talked about earlier, each stack is going to have 5 monsters in it, or 6 depending upon the number of players you're playing. And then you're going to place those stacks out in ascending order, so as you can see, each monster stack gets harder. From there, you're going to put out citizen stacks, so each citizen is going to have a total of 6 cards in it. And like I said, in the base game, there's going to be 2 of each different type of citizen, or different number, so you can choose which ones you want to use. From here, go ahead and shuffle up your domain deck and deal out 2 domains to each area face down. And then the last one will be face up, so you'll have 3 domains in each section. Go ahead and place out the resources in easy reach, so you have strength, magic, and gold. The last thing you need to do is get a number of exhausted players, and you'll get 2 exhausted players per player. So we're going to play a 2-player game, so you'll have 4 exhausted cards, and you'll go ahead and place those somewhere on the field. And each time one of the stacks gets depleted, one of those cards will move in there, and that will be one of the conditions to end the game. From there, you're ready to determine the starting player, and you can do this in a number of different fashions. I like to grab the first player token and a bunch of extra tokens based on the number of players. So we're playing a 2-player game, so I get 1 first player token and 1 regular token, mix them up and have somebody draw, and whoever draws the first player token will be the first player. But you can do this in any way you choose. Valeria is played over a series of turns, with each turn divided into 4 different phases. There's the roll phase, harvest phase, action phase, and end phase. And each player will get to do these 4 phases during a turn. The player with the first player marker will receive the action dice, and you're ready to start that player's turn. The first thing that we'll do during that player's turn is the roll phase, and he's going to go ahead and roll his 2 action dice. Now, there are going to be some domains later on in the game as you purchase them that will allow you to change your dice rolls. You can only use 1 domain per dice to change its result. Once the player is done with that, he will announce the dice results and we'll move into the harvest phase. During the harvest phase, all the players are going to receive resources for the dice that are rolled. So first, each player that has a citizen that's a 2 or a 3 will receive rewards. So if anybody had the merchant or mercenary, they would get rewards. Neither one of our players do since it's the start of the game. And then the combination of the 2 dice together, which would be a 5. So both of our players have a peasant, so they're going to receive resources for that. The active player, the player that rolled a dice, will receive the reward on the left side of the card, so he'll get 1 gold. And the player on the other players that are not active will receive the reward on the right side of the card, which is also 1 gold piece. Now, you will receive rewards for each peasant that you have. So if one of the players had multiple peasants, he would have received multiple gold pieces, 1 piece per peasant. And then also, if you happen to roll doubles, so if we were to roll double 5s, then each player would have received 2 gold pieces for having 1 peasant, or 4 gold pieces for having 2 peasants, because each dice is activated individually with each card that that player has. So that is one of the reasons why it can be beneficial to buy multiples of the same type of citizen. And if you do not get to activate and get any rewards or any resources during your turn, so let's say that we rolled a pair of 4s. So neither one of our players had archers, and neither one of our players had champions. So at that situation, when you don't get any resources at all, you're allowed to take 1 resource from the bank of your choice. So you could either have a gold, a magic, or a strength. The third phase in a player's turn is the action phase. And during the action phase, the player is going to be able to perform 2 different actions or 2 of the same action from the following list, which is to slay a monster, recruit a citizen, gain a resource, or he can build a domain. So let's go ahead and take a look at a breakdown of each one of these. So if you choose to slay a monster, you would select one of the monsters that's on the top of the stack and pay the cost in strength to destroy them. Now you must have strength to do it. Now you can augment your strength with magic. Magic is kind of like a wild where you have to spend at least 1 strength, but say you wanted to kill the skeleton and you only had 1 strength, you could spend your 1 magic to count as 1 of your strength. Again, you have to have 1 strength to spend though in order to augment. So once you defeat a monster, so let's say that player 1 happened to have 1 strength, he could spend that to kill the goblin. When he does, the goblin is removed and added to his victory pile, and he receives the reward that's listed on the bottom of the card. So he would get 1 gold. The next option we have is to recruit a citizen. So the first thing you do is select one of the citizens that you'd like to recruit, and you would pay the cost in gold. So let's go ahead and say that we would like to have a rogue. So we pay 2 gold, and the plus symbol means that if we already have a rogue, then we pay an additional gold for each rogue that we have. So if we were to buy this rogue, it would cost us 2 gold. And during our next turn, if we wanted to buy another rogue, it would cost us 2 gold plus an additional gold for each rogue we had. So it would cost us 3 gold. And that applies to any citizen that you have, including the starter one. So if you purchase another peasant, you already have 1, so you'd have to pay 3 gold to purchase an additional peasant or knight. Another option that you have as an action that you can perform is to gain a resource. If you don't have any of the resource that you need, then you can spend an action to choose 1 of the resources from the bank and gain 1 of that resource. So say you really needed to fight a monster, but you had no strength, but you had a ton of magic. You could do one of your actions to gain a strength, and that way then you could use a strength to fight the monster and augment it with your magic. The last option as an action you can perform is to purchase a domain from one of the domain stacks. Now you must purchase the top domain from the stack, and you must meet all the requirements. So for example, if we were to buy this domain over here, we would have to have 2 holy citizens in our section, so we could have like a cleric or 2 clerics, or a cleric and a paladin, or 2 paladins, and that would allow us to give us the 2 symbols that we need to meet those requirements. From there, then we would also need to have 8 golds, or at least 1 gold and 7 magic, or a combination of the 2 to purchase that. Once you purchase it, then you would receive the reward that's listed on the bottom of the card, unless it's an action, in which case then it'll take effect during your next turn or whenever it says. The end conditions for this game are one of the 3 following. Either all the monsters have been slain from the 5 stacks, or the exhausted cards have been placed equal to twice the number of players, or if the stack has been depleted. So in a 2-player game, if there's 4 exhausted cards out, then the game is over. And the last one is if all the domains are purchased. The last thing players need to do when the game is over is to do scoring. So for example, let's go ahead and say that we have our Duke here, and for him he gets 1 victory point for each monster times the number of monsters he's killed. So with our player, he's only killed 1 monster, so he'll get 1 victory point there. He gets 5 victory points for each boss he's killed, which he hasn't killed any yet. And then you receive 1 victory point for every 2 resources that you have, which we have a total of 3, so we'll have another victory point from those 2, and that gives us a total of 2 victory points. And this is just an example. Now that I've taken you through the game, let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of example turns just so you guys can see the flow of things. So this is our first player, and so he's going to go ahead and start the game. So he'll roll his action dice. He rolls a 5 and a 6. He doesn't have any domains yet to change those symbols, so he's going to hold those, and we move into the harvest phase. So for him, he gets a gold for being the active player, and then the other player will also receive a gold because he has a peasant. And then our player has a knight, so he'll get 1 strength, and the other player also has a knight, so he will receive 1 strength. And then the total of the dice is 11, and none of the players have an 11 citizen yet. So then we move into our active player's action phase, where he can do 2 different actions. So let's go ahead and fight a goblin. And so we get 1 gold for that, for defeating the goblin, since we spent our strength to defeat him. And then let's go ahead and buy a citizen. So I'm feeling that the 7 might be a good one to go with. So let's go ahead and spend 2 gold, and we'll buy the rogue. All right. At that point, we've done our 2 actions, and the end game conditions have not been met yet, so we'll pass the dice to the next player. That player's going to go. He rolls a 4 and a 6. Neither one of the players have a 4, so we don't have to worry about that. And we both have a 6, so we'll gain a strength each. And nobody has a 10. So from here, then we move into our active player's action phase. And he's just going to go right after some citizens, so we're going to go ahead and buy... Let's go ahead and buy a 4, because the 4 seems to come up a lot. So we'll spend 3 gold and 1 magic to get us 4 points. And so we'll get our archer. And we don't have any gold left, so let's go ahead and fight a monster. So we got 2 strength, so let's go ahead and fight a skeleton. And that is our second action. And the skeleton gives us 1 gold. And so then we pass the dice back over to the first player. He's going to go again, and he rolls 1, 2, and the total of the 2 is a 3. So he doesn't have any of those guys, so he gets to choose 1. So he's going to take a magic, and the other player gets to do the same because he also didn't activate any, so he's going to also take a magic. From here we move into the actions. So let's go ahead and purchase another citizen, and let's go ahead and get a mercenary. So that'll cost us 3. So we're going to spend 2 gold in a magic. And then let's go ahead and fight another goblin. And he gets us another gold. And so our player's turn is done. So we'll move over to player 2. He rolls a 1 and a 6. So from here, nobody has any 1s. But both players have a 6, so they'll both get a strength. And then player 1 does have a 7, which on his off turn gives him a strength and a gold. All right. From here, then we go into player 2's turn. And let's go ahead and purchase a champion. So he's going to spend his gold and magic. And let's go ahead and fight a goblin. And that gets us 1 gold. And that is his 2 actions. So his turn is over. So we'll go back to player 1. Player 1 rolls a 3, a 5, and then the total of the 2 is an 8. So he does have a mercenary. So he's going to get 1 gold and 1 strength. Both players have peasants, which will get them both a gold. And then player 2 does happen to have an 8, which says that he can trade 1 gold for 4 strength. So he's going to go ahead and do that. So that'll get him 4 strength. And then we move into this player's action phase. So let's go ahead and purchase... Let's go ahead and get a paladin. And we have 3 strength, so let's go ahead and fight a tree. So 3 strength, and we'll fight a tree, and he gets us a gold and a magic. All right, so that's an example of how the game runs, and you would just keep doing this until one of those endgame conditions are met. Hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you again on the table.